Good morning, my dear future chartered accountants. This is CH in my Hegde. Can you please confirm first that my voice is audible and the PPT is visible? Is the voice is fine and you can see the PPT? Is everything is clear? Can one of you confirm, please? Is voice audible and PPT is clear? Can I get one confirmation? Is voice audible? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Okay. So this is the day one of the pre-session on FR classes. Before I begin, let me make few things very clear. These are free upgradation FR classes covering new study material questions which are newly added, not all the questions which are newly added, and latest RTP, MTP, and latest suggested answers given by ICA. The objective is to cover these updated, upgraded classes, and it is not a substitute for conceptual classes. So this will not substitute your regular FR classes. This will not substitute your fast track FR classes, and this will not substitute for the people who want to convert from old syllabus to new syllabus. This is not a substitute. This is a add-on. So if you are expecting to learn these standards from my classes, these sessions, it's not going to happen. If you already know, these are going to be a value add. So it's not revision classes per se. So keep that in mind. These are only for upgradation purpose. And if you have any doubts, you can definitely ask. I'm definitely open for it. Whether you are my student or any other student, no problem. As long as you're interested, I'm ready to support you. And material is shared in my Telegram channel at CH in my Hegde. Please download the material. All the questions which I'm going to solve are shared in the Telegram channel in the PDF format. Please download it. And for the convenience of saving time, I've also put the solution given by ICI as it is. In some cases, I might have some difference of opinion, which I'll discuss with you when we cover those topics. But the solutions I've shared is the solution as it is given by ICAI. So to save the time, a given solution also, let's make use of it. Of course, problems and all, we will be doing it separately in a slightly different format given by ICI. But in some cases, like theory questions, case study questions, it's better if we can read through the solution so we can save some time. My estimation is to run for about a month. So I want to complete by the end of August at least these sessions. But if some things might take more time, I'm not sure. So having said this, I hope I made things very clear because I got some questions after yesterday's announcement. I hope things are clear. And this will be definitely be more useful for those students who is undergoing my Google Drive or pen drive classes. So what is the best way you can adopt? You take my sessions anytime during the day. It is anyway Google Drive, pen drive. And you can ask the doubts in these sessions. Of course, you can ask the doubts in Telegram, WhatsApp also. But if you want a quick reaction, you can definitely ask in these sessions. Relevant for the topic, what we are discussing in these sessions. Order, I told you, I'll repeat once more. The order is going to be first chapter, Ind AS 1, Ind AS 34, Ind AS 7. That is the initial one. And then I will go into the consolidation, business combination, financial instruments, those three heavyweight chapters. Then I'll come back from the beginning, that is regular standards in the order of study material. I'll follow the same order. I hope I made the order clear. But anyway, in my title, every day, which standard is being covered, I will be specifying it. Is there anything that I need to clarify? Nothing to my mind. Okay. I think let us begin. Right? Okay. I repeat, just one final announcement. I am not covering concepts here. I'm straight away going for solving problems. While solving problems, any relevant concept comes that we will discuss. So please do not take this as a substitute for your regular or fast track conceptual classes. I hope I made the disclaimer very clear. Okay, let's move forward. Is it good for those who have already given July 21 attempt? Yeah, that's definitely to your knowledge, I mean, your decision. If you are not very confident of this attempt, then you may attempt. But what I would recommend is if you have written July 21 attempt, if you are not at all confident, you can attend this. It will be definitely be useful. If you are uh, doubtful whether you clear this or not, then what I would recommend, these videos will be available later also. It will be available in the YouTube for later view purpose. So let the result comes, and later if you want, you can just go through this in a faster space maybe to cover the topics. But nevertheless, if you are interested in FR, or if you want, you don't know better ways of maybe, I don't know what to say, to utilize the time in effective manner, maybe you can attend this. Your knowledge at least will definitely grow. That's what I would say if you've written the July attempt already. So first of all, I hope you have downloaded the material. So this is the question number 1 in that material. Please see if you are able to get this question. I'll just wait for a couple of minutes. In case some people have not yet download the material, please go to the Telegram channel. As you can see at the bottom of the page at CA Chinmay Hegde, you can subscribe and you can click on the discussion channel. I have shared the PDF document. Please download it. If possible, you can take a printout. That is left to your choice. Anyway, I will be having the questions in the PPT format like this. So even if you don't have material, it's no problem. You can still refer the uh, questions on the PPT. Whether your Hegde's Edge book covers these problems, it will cover most of the problems, but still some more new questions might have been added. So what do? If you have my Hegde's Edge book, latest book will definitely have it, which is going for the print now. Will definitely have it. But if you have already purchased it, some questions might be there and some questions are being added. So you can use this material I've given as a add-on material for the questions which are not there. But for the latest one, which you're going to purchase, will definitely have all these questions. A week ago, okay. If you have received the book week ago, new study material questions would have been added. But these RT latest suggested answers questions, that might not have been added. So I would say about 60 to 70% of the questions are there in the book which you have received 1 week. Some questions are being added. So you don't have to purchase any new book. Please do download the material anyway. And any new questions are there, you can use it for your reference as an upgradation. So for those people who have not joined, I hope you have downloaded the material from Telegram channel. As I told you, anyway, it will be there in the PPT format. and we will be reading the question together. Okay, so I think let's begin. Okay, fine. So let us read the question. XYZ company, a limited company, is into manufacturing of tractor parts and mainly supplying the components to the original equipment manufacturers. Okay, they are talking about their business. The company does not have any subsidiary, joint venture, or associate company. During the preparation of financial statements for the year ended March 31st, the accounts department is not sure about the treatment or presentation of the below mentioned matters. Accounts department approach you to advise on the following matters. Okay, so we have to mention, or we have to give our opinion regarding these points. There are qualifications in the audit report of the company with reference to two Ind AS. There are qualifications in the audit report of the company with respect to two Ind AS. Now, what is the presentation that you would like to have, or what is the point that you can connect with this point with reference to Ind AS 1, let's say. Ind AS 1, presentation of financial statements, specifically tells if you are following Ind AS. If you're following Ind AS, you have to say that. What is the word we use? The organization has to use the words unreserved explicit statement. Explicit means it has to be written on the notes on the face of it, and unreserved means you should not have any exceptions. So if you have any qualifications, that should be disclosed. So an entity whose financial statements comply with Ind AS shall make an explicit and unreserved statement. I always use this. In the solutions in examination, I'm going to read like this. Well, they'll mention about this para and all. If you know the paragraph number, you can write. Otherwise, you need not write the paragraph number. And the answer need not be verbatim. But what you should use is keywords like this: explicit and unreserved statement. You don't have to use the full sentence as it is from ICA material, but use these specific words, keywords. When you use it, the evaluator will automatically get the opinion that you know the technical subject. So use these three words. So highlight the word explicit and unreserved statement in the notes. An entity shall not describe the financial statements as complying with Ind AS unless they comply with the requirements of Ind AS. Refer to paragraph 16 of Ind AS 1. Okay, so what they mentioned, the auditor, the question is, the solution is not actually very clear. Let me explain. Ind AS 1 says you have to mention a statement, which should be an unreserved statement, explicit statement that, like, the above financial statements are in compliance with Ind AS as per pronouncements of whatever Companies Act 2016, whatever the rules, like that. You have to make a statement. If company does not have compliance with some Ind AS, they cannot say the above financial statements are in compliance with the Ind AS except Ind AS 23. If you use that exception, then the financial statements are not as per Ind AS. But now, in the point number 1, they said there are two qualifications. There are qualifications in the audit report with reference to Ind AS. There are two qualifications. Now, does that mean there is an exception to Ind AS compliance? The answer is no. No, that's not the meaning of this. Auditor can have a difference of opinion. They can mention in the Audit report. Auditor having a qualification does not mean entity does not in compliance. Auditor has expressed his opinion. Difference of opinion can always be there. So this point 1 basically tells you, or we should make a point like, auditor has given a qualification in the audit report does not mean that entity is having a non-compliance, and therefore entity should mention an unreserved explicit statement. I hope the point is clear. I'll go to the second point. Is it mandatory to add the word standalone before each of the component of financial statements? As you know, if you are doing without consolidation, it's called as standalone financial statements. If you are having with joint venture subsidiary associate, it's called as consolidated financial statements. But the company does not have any subsidiary joint venture associate. So where is the need for you to prepare consolidated financial statements? So when you don't have a need to consolidate, that means you prepare only one set. Should I call it a standalone? The answer is no. The word standalone comes only if you have a joint venture subsidiary associate and you want to make the distinction, because you prepare two sets of financial statements. One set is for with consolidation, other set is without consolidation. That is, with consolidation, consolidated financial statements. Without consolidation, standalone financial statements. You have to make the distinction, so use the word standalone. If you have only one set of financial statements, no need to use the word standalone. That's what the standard says, no, but need to disclose the financial statement as the individual, meaning whenever you address this, you will address it as individual financial statements. You have only one, you have only one set. But even if you don't write this point, it's fine. But the word standalone will not be added. It is only be added by the company which has joint venture, subsidiary, associate, to distinguish the financial statements from the consolidated with the standalone. Hope you got the point. So no need to write, my dear friends. The solutions are there already. You can make some note of it if you want it, so that we can discuss more and reduce time. The company is having a turnover of 180 crores. The company wants to present the absolute figures in the financial statements because one more I missed it. The company is an Indian company preparing financial statements in rupees. Is it necessary to write the financial statements that financial statements has been presented in rupees? The relevant standard is actually functional currency, Ind AS 21, which says functional currency means the currency in which entity primarily operates, primary economic environment in which the entity operates. Which currency? That is not mentioned in the Ind AS 21. And therefore, when you prepare a financial statements, which is your functional currency, you have to mention it. Since you're preparing in rupees, maybe rupee is your functional currency, you have to mention that. So as per paragraph, if you don't write para is also fine. Entity shall display presentation currency. Presentation currency. I use the word function, sorry. Presentation currency. Functional currency is for you to account the transactions. You will learn in Ind AS 21. Presentation is to prepare fund statements. Predominantly repeat it with necessary for the information presented to be understandable. So entity shall display the presentation currency. So rupee is the presentation currency. Therefore, you should display, mention what is the presentation currency. In this case, it is rupees. You need to mention that. The company is having a turnover of 180 crores. The company wants to present the absolute figure in the financial statements. Because for tax audit purpose, tax related filings and other internal purposes, company always needs figure in absolute amounts. Yes, it is mandatory as per division 2 of schedule 3 of Companies Act. Okay, I think this point is not very clear in the solution. They have not asked yes or no actually, but anyway. So basically, the point is regarding round off. The classification is there in the division 2 of the schedule 3, applicable for Ind AS. If you are having a turnover less than 100 crores, you can round off to up to this level. If you are having a turnover more than 100 crores, you can round off even up to rupees in crores. That's what they are telling regarding the round off. That point you can mention here. Okay, fifth point. The company had sales transaction with 10 related party during the previous year. Related party Ind AS 24. However, during the current year, there are no transactions with 4 related parties out of aforesaid 10 related parties. Hence, the company is of the view that it need not disclose the sale transaction with the 4 parties in related parties because these parties there are no transactions. Evaluate the above matter for the purpose for the presentation of general purpose financial statements. Okay, so except when Ind AS permits otherwise, an entity shall present the comparative information with respect to the preceding period for all the amounts reported in the current periods, and entity shall include the comparative information of narrative description if relevant to the understanding the current financial statements. Means in the current year, uh, is the video running? Okay, fine. In the current year, for those 4 related party, there are no transactions. But we should always provide current year information, previous year information. If previous year related party is there, current year is not there, then at least for the purpose of comparative, we need to present like this. Current year, there are no transaction. Previous year, so much. That's what this point says. So, for the purpose of understanding the financial statements, if the entity feels, if the entity opinions, you have to provide the comparative information, and then current year there are no transaction, that fact should be disclosed. If there are no transaction in the previous year also, then the nature of transactions need not be disclosed. If you refer Ind AS 24, there are more things. And some relationship, even though there are no transactions, need to be reported. For example, a holding substitute relationship, even if there are no transactions, that should be reported. And a payment to employees emoluments, even if it is zero amount, that should be reported. But for other transactions, if there are no transactions in the previous year, it need not be reported. But here, you should keep it mentioned. In the latest financial year, it may not be there. Previous year financial, it might be there. So, for the purpose of comparison, both facts need to be presented. So, that's about this problem. Hope you made a note of it. Any doubts? Okay, I'll move forward. Okay, next. Okay, so next one. If these questions are not added, maybe you can take this PDF as the add-on material. This book, you can take it as add-on material. And that is the purpose of solving these things also. Because this some books might not have it. And that is why I have given this material. Anyway, the PDF is as it is available. I have shared in the Telegram channel. So entire PDF as it is, you can take it as add-on material. Right? Got it? Okay, let me read. A company presents the financial statements for 3 years. One for current year, two for comparative years. 3 financial statements. Internally for the purpose of management information every year in addition to general purpose financial statements. Internally, they are preparing 3 financial statements internally. The aforesaid financial results are presented without furnishing the related notes because these are not required by the management for internal purpose. Okay, so these financial results are furnishing without notes because it's for internal purposes. Notes are not added. During the current year, management thought why not they should present the third year statement of profit and loss in general purpose financial statements. It will save time and will be available easily whenever management needs this in future. Have you got the points, my dear friends? What is happening here? Ind AS 1 or Schedule 3 for that matter requires you to prepare 2 financial statements, current year and previous year comparative. But the management is doing 3 financial statements internally without preparing notes for the third year. Now, can they roll out that 3 financial statements for the public also? Does Schedule 3 restrict, or do you have a choice to prepare 3 statements instead of 2 statements? If you use the words or if you have looked at the words carefully, you will definitely understand. The content of Schedule 3 or Ind AS 1 or any statutory requirement is always minimum requirements. If the entity wants to present more, they are never restricted. So, what is your fundamental answer to this question? Definitely, entity can present because the standard only say minimum 2 balance sheets, minimum 2 financial statements. You can always present more than 2. Let's read the question anyways. With reference to the above background, answer the following. Can the management present the third financial statements as an additional comparative in the general purpose financial statements? I just told you, definitely yes. If the management present the third statement of profit and loss for the general purpose fund statements as comparative, is it necessary it should comply with Ind AS? Interesting one. Because Ind AS is not asking, but you are providing. So, does it comply with Ind AS? Is it required? Can management present the third statement of profit and loss only as an additional comparative in general purpose financial statements without furnishing other components like balance sheet, a statement of cash flows, a statement of equity, or financial statements? So, second part of the question is like, if I present the third financial statements voluntarily, should it follow Ind AS? And third part of the question says, can I follow partial presentation? That is, P&L I'll show for 3 years. But balance sheet I'll show only for 2 years. Cash flow statement I show for 2 years. So can I follow partial presentation? Let's see what the answers says. As per para 26, entity may present the comparative information in addition to the minimum requirements as long as the information prepared is prepared in accordance with Ind AS. Interesting sentence. So the way you present need not be as per Ind AS for the third financial statements, the third comparative, but the amount you compute should be as per Ind AS. Clear with the point? The third financial statement figure, what you show, should be computed as per Ind AS. And is it necessary they should be compared with Ind AS? Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, it should be. The third one should be compared with Ind AS. You should compute and present. In the sense, just because you are doing something what Ind AS is not telling, Ind AS is telling only 2 and you are going with 3, you can't say that I will prepare the third one without complying with Ind AS. That's not accepted. You have to follow Ind AS. presentation. So if you present the financial statements, it has to be with Ind AS. That has to be very, very clear. You can't say that the two is what they asked, I'll follow Ind AS. Third one they have not asked, I'm doing it on my own, so I'll do without Ind AS. Not accepted. Okay. That was the question, whether can you present only P and L? Yes, you can present only P and L. Entity may present the comparative information in addition to minimum comparative as required by Ind AS, as long as the information is recorded in Ind AS. So when you want to present, can I present only third part? You can do it. That's not a problem. The comparative information may consist of one or more statement, may consist of one or more statements. So only for P and L you want to present additionally, you can, but it has to be in compliance with Ind AS. So you can present partial information, but that should follow Ind AS. That is the summary part of this requirement. So hope you got this one. Shall I go forward? Okay, next. Okay, next one. A company, while preparing the financial statements for the financial year 2001-2, erroneously booked an excess revenue of 10 crores. Intentionally, does not matter. There was an error. Erroneously booked excess revenue of 10 crores. The total revenue reported in the year 2001-2 was 80 crores. However, while preparing the financial statements for 2-3, it discovered that excess revenue was booked in the year 1-2, which it now wants to correct in financial statements. However, management is not sure whether to present third balance sheet as an additional comparative. With regard to the above background, answer the following. Is it necessary to provide a third balance sheet at the beginning of the proceeding in the third case? In this case, the company wants to correct the error during the 2-3 by giving impact in the figures of current year only. Is the contention of the management correct? Okay. So what is happening here? In certain situations, you have to provide third financial statements. We always provide current year, for example, 31st March 2021, then comparative 31st March 2020. But in certain cases, you have to provide beginning of the previous year, three financial statements, 31/3/2021, 31/3/2020, beginning of previous year, 1/4/2019, so that the impact can be understood clearly by investors, stakeholders. What are those situations? When the third balance sheet is required, when entity applies accounting policy retrospectively, or it makes a retrospective restatements or reclassifications. Retrospective application, retrospective restatement, reclassification has a material effect at the beginning of the year. So only in these cases, when you are doing a retrospective calculation or retrospective accounting, you need to provide third balance sheet. Now here you are identifying the mistake in the current year. You are rectifying the previous financial statements. That's why they said it's not required to prepare the third financial statements. Then second point is important. Company wants to correct the error in 2-3 by giving the impact of current year only. That is not accepted. Management need to correct previous year figures to correct the error but need not furnish the third balance sheet at the beginning of the preceding period. The reason is previous year revenue is affected, previous year opening balance is not affected, right? Revenue, previous year revenue affected means current year opening balance only affected. But if you have a material mistake, if you have a accounting policy change or which restatement requires retrospective change which will affect the opening balance of previous year, then only three financial statements are required. Here, previous year revenue, you have to change it for the purpose of comparison, but that will not affect the opening balance of the previous year. So, third balance sheet not required. The mistake should be rectified in the previous year financial statements only for the purpose of comparison. Previous year financial statement is closed. I cannot touch it. But in the current year financial statements, I'll provide the comparative previous year column. That amount revenue, previous year revenue should be reduced by this amount given. And I don't require to present third balance sheet because previous year revenue only affected, previous year opening balance not affected. If previous year opening balance affected because of restatement, reclassification, accounting policy change, then if opening balance affected, then three financial statements, current year, previous year, beginning of previous year, three columnar should be presented. That's about this problem. Hope you got it. Any doubts? Okay, I'll move forward. Okay, so let's read the next question. XYZ Limited, the company is into construction of turnkey projects, construction company, infrastructure company, and has assessed its operating cycle to be 18 months. Operating cycle to be 18 months. The company has certain trade receivables and payables, which are receivable and payable within a period of 12 months from the reporting date, that is 31st March 2002. So they have some receivable and payable within a period of 12 months from the reporting date. In addition to the above, there are following items or transactions which took place during the financial year 2001-2. X1, X2 means it's like any other year. So we'll read as 2001-2 for our reference. The company has made some trade receivables which are due after 15 months. Normal, some trade receivables are within 12 months, but some receivables are after 12 months from the date of balance sheet. So the company expects the payment will be received within the period of operating cycle. It is after 12 months, but before 18 months. 18 months is the operating cycle. Is it going to be current or non-current? Okay. Other points we'll discuss along with this. However, does not come. Okay. Let's read the first part of the solution. Is it going to be current or non-current? What do you think? What is definition of current? Is it receivable within 12 months? That's what the standard says. No. Neither the Schedule 3 nor Ind AS 1. First, you should always check whether it is receivable within operating cycle. If it is receivable within operating cycle, it becomes current. And how do you calculate the operating cycle? It is inventory days plus debtor days plus any other WIP days. Don't subtract creditor days, gross operating cycle. If that is that amount is what you should consider as operating cycle compared with the receivable amount. And in this case, it is 18 months construction company, so 18 months is reasonable. And you are having 12 months, 15 months, which is less than 18 months of current operating cycle. Therefore, it will be classified as, the company wants to present the trade receivable as current, despite the fact that these are trade receivable in 15 months' time. Does the decision presenting the same trade is correct? The answer is yes. It is current item. They want to present it, and you are presenting it. Definitely correct. But in because it is within operating cycle, that's the point you have to mention. But one paragraph of Ind AS specifically says if it is after 12 months, you need to disclose the amounts. This is like a aging analysis. Anything receivable within a period of 12 months and after 12 months, you need to make a separation. Within period of 12 months, how much? After 12 months, how much? It's like aging analysis. That's only a additional disclosure purpose, but does not mean it is a non-current item. It will still be a current item only as it is within operating cycle of 18 months. Second, the company has some trade payables which are due for payment after 14 months from the date of balance sheet. These payables fall due within the period of operating cycle, though the company does not expect that it will be able to pay these payable within the operating cycle because the nature of the business is such that generally the projects gets delayed and the payments from customer also gets delayed. That's a different experience. Let's see what they want to do. The company wants to present the trade payable as non-current despite the fact that these are due within the operating cycle of the company. Does the decision presenting the same as non-current is correct? Definitely answer is not correct. The company cannot disclose these payables as non-current because it is within the operating cycle. Same answer, right? Within the operating cycle means you need to show it as current. Within 12 months, about 12 months, as the additional disclosure, as an aging analysis is disclosed, but still within operating cycle, it has to be current. Because of the nature of the business, that comes later. That is no way addressed in the standards. So it has to be as current only, not as non-current. Then third part of the question, the company awarded a contract of rupees 100 crores on 31st March 2002, the balance sheet date. As per the terms of the contract, the company made a security deposit of 5% of the contract value. To get the tender, you need to put some deposit with the customer of 5 crore on 31st March 2002. The contract is expected to be completed within 18 months time. Of course, the deposit will be refunded back after 6 months from the date of completion of the contract. So you have got a contract, you have deposited of 5% of the amount with the customer, and this will be complete within 18 months within operating cycle, but you don't get the money immediately after completion. It will be refunded after 6 months from the date of completion. Can the security deposit be classified as current? The answer is no, because amount will be received after operating cycle, because project will be completed within 18 months, but still it takes 6 months more, because the refundable amount is within 6 months from the date of completion. Therefore, it will cross operating cycle. It cross operating cycle means it becomes non-current. You cannot show it as current item. Next, the company has also given certain contracts to third parties and has received security deposits from them of 2 crores on 31st March 2002, which are repayable on completion of the contract. But if the contract is cancelled before the contract term of 18 months, then it becomes payable immediately. You received the deposit, so it's a liability. When is it going to be repaid? Upon completion of the contract. But if the contract is cancelled, Before the term of 18 months, it will be payable immediately. Can the security deposit be shown as non-current? So in this case, the answer is again no, because the amount may be required to be paid. Because if a contract is cancelled, it becomes payable immediately. The term is always there, and therefore it should be classified as current item. It is it's payable on demand. The moment contract is cancelled, you may have to pay it immediately. Therefore, we will not be show it as non-current. It will be classified as current. Very basic problems still can be asked in examination. Okay, so hope you got this one. Shall we move forward? Okay, next. Okay, so next problem. Entity A had obtained long-term bank loan during January 2019, which is subject to certain financial covenants, some conditions. So this may be breach of long-term loan, which will classify from non-current to current. One of the covenant states that during the tenure of the loan, debt equity ratio of 65 to 35 is to be maintained at all time. You have taken a loan. One of the condition is your debt equity ratio should be 65 to 35. You cannot take more debt. In case of breach of this covenant, loan will be repayable immediately. It's a long-term loan. You have lot of conditions. One of the condition is you should maintain debt equity ratio of 65 to 35. If that is not maintained, what is long-term loan becomes payable immediately. Non-current becomes current. The loan agreement also states that these covenants will be assessed at the end of each quarter and report to the bank within a month from the end of each quarter. If the covenants are breached at this time, loan will be repayable immediately. The entity closes the accounts 31st of March every year. You are required to show the how the loan will be classified on 31st March 2020 if on the financial year end entity A determines that it is not in breach of any covenants. Okay, so before we read this problem requirement, let me quickly revise the concept of this chart on revision of or this conversion or breach of long-term loans. Only that part, let me just quickly revise the chart. I'm not discussing in detail, but still just for your quick analysis. Breach of long-term loan arrangement. If there is a breach within the financial year or after the financial year, if it is after the financial year breach, then it will not be considered for current year. It becomes non-current. It will continue to be non-current. If there is a breach in the current and financial year, then you should check for one more thing. What is that? Check for the grace period. If no grace period, then it is breach has taken place and non-current loan has become current loan. If there is a grace period, then check whether what is the grace period. If the grace period is less than 12 months, then you can continue it as then you should take it as 12 months. I mean, you should take it as current because less than 12 months we'll take it as current. If the grace period is more than 12 months, then you take it as non-current. So this is what the summary part relating to the breach of long-term loan. Let me repeat this once more, this summary, and then I'll apply this problem. If there is a breach in the after balance sheet date, you ignore for current year. It continues to be non-current. If there is a breach in the current year, then check whether there is a grace period, and grace period is more than 12 months. Only then you take it as non-current. If there is no grace period, or grace period is less than 12 months, then it is a breach and it is converted from non-current to current to be reported as current. Only if the grace period is more than 12 months, then only you'll show it as non-current. That's what this summary says. Now, let's apply this problem. Okay, let's look at the requirement now. You're required to show how the loan will be classified on 31st March 2020. If at the financial year end, entity A determines that there is no breach in any of the covenants, then can you tell me what is the answer? The simplest answer. There is no breach at all. What do you think would be the answer then? If there is no breach, it continues to be classified as. It's a long term loan. So it will be classified as. Okay. It will be classified as non-current. Because it's a long-term loan, it will be continues to be classified as non-current. So this paragraph is there, you can read it. It will be continued to be classified as non-current liability because there is no breach. At the quarter ending December 2019, entity A has a debt equity ratio of 75:25. You crossed 65 and thus breaches covenant. However, it obtains a waiver from the bank. The terms of the waiver specify if entity rectifies a breach within a period of 12 months, grace period within a period of 12 months from the operating day, from the reporting date, then the bank cannot demand the repayment immediately on account of the breach during this period. Entity expects to rectify the breach by raising additional equity capital by means of right issue to the existing shareholders, and thus issue will be fully subscribed, and expects that issue will be fully subscribed. So you have a grace period here. And what is a grace period? You have a grace period of 12 months. 12 months or more, we should understand like that. So since grace period of 12 months is given, we will be classifying it as non-current liability. Also, of course, they want to rectify the breach. That means all the facts indicates they want to continue it as long-term loan. So it's non-current liability because grace period is of 12 months. If it was 11 months grace period, then it would have been only current classification. Considering the same facts above, except obtaining the waiver clause, what would be your answer? Same facts above, except obtaining the waiver clause. Okay, that means you don't have waiver clause. If the covenant bank has breached the thing, if waiver clause is not there, then it becomes payable immediately. Therefore, it will be classified as current liability. Straightforward. If the waiver clause not there, grace period is not there, specific grace period is given, but waiver clause not there. That means the rectification may not happen, and rectification may not happen means a breach has taken place. It is payable immediately. Payable immediately means it is classified as current. So read the question. Let me know if you have any doubts. Okay, I'll go further. Okay, RTP June 2021. An entity has the following trial balance line items. How items should be classified, current or non-current, as per Ind AS 1. Receivables, receivable under a contract of sale of goods in which entity deals. Receivables, how will you classify? If it is within operating cycle, then current, otherwise non-current. Advance to suppliers within operating cycle, current, otherwise non-current. Income tax, receivables, then we will take it as less than 12 months current, more than 12 months non-current. Insurance spares, okay. Uh, so this classification, current depends on normal operating cycle. Same thing apply for B also. Income tax, the operating cycle we don't apply. We apply the period of 12 months based on within 12 months. Okay. Regarding insurance spares, that you need to understand the application of Ind AS 16 as well as Ind AS 2. So what the standard says, is it a standalone spare or it has to be used in connection with other machineries? If it is used as a backup, that's what this point says. If the spare parts are standby equipment, independent equipment, and recognized in accordance with this Ind AS, then the definition of PPE you have to apply. Whether the definition as per PPE, whether it provides a future economic benefits, whether cost can be measured, reliable measurement of future economic benefits. So those conditions, if they are met, then those spares will come under PPE. If they are not treated as PPE, then it will become current asset. So hope you understand. So insurance spares, machinery spares, you should check whether definition of PPE is met or not. If it is met, it becomes non-current because it becomes a PP in day 16. If it is the definition of PP is not met, it becomes inventory. It will be shown as a current asset, inventory in days 2. Therefore, in that case, it will become current item. So that's what these answer says. You should write the definition, then mention that if it is within operating cycle, then current, beyond operating cycle, non-current, for receivable also, for payable also, for income tax, straight away it will become 12 months. Spares we have discussed. So this is about the Ind AS 1 basics problems which are newly added. So any questions from your side on this? Okay, good. And as I told you, my dear friends, these are not revision classes. I mean, yeah, these are not revision classes. These are not fast track classes. These are not conceptual classes. I'm straight away going to the problems. So if you come to the classes without preparation, I'm sure you will not make head and tail out of this. The expectation is you be prepared already with my classes, somebody else classes, or on your own. You should have the preparation earlier, and these are the problems which will add value to your preparation. If you have any doubts, you can get clarified. But don't depend on these sessions to learn something new. Don't start fresh with these sessions. You're going to be disappointed for sure. Okay. I hope you understood. That is what is about Ind AS 1. Small problems, nothing new. I'll go to the next standard. Okay, so come to the next one, Ind AS 34. Next set of problems, Ind AS 34. I think this is the first question we have. ABC Limited presents that problem. Okay, so hope you got this question. Let us read. ABC Limited presents interim financial report quarterly. On 1st of April 2001, ABC Limited has carried forward loss of 600 lakhs for income tax purpose for which deferred tax asset has not been recognized. ABC Limited earns rupees 900 lakhs in each quarter during 30th June 2001, 30th September 2001, 31st December 2001, and 31st March 2002, excluding the carry forward losses. Income tax rate is expected to be 40%. Calculate the amount of tax expense to be reported in each quarter. So regarding income tax, we are going to apply something called as average income tax rate, average effective rates, average rate, average income tax rate. That's what we need to calculate, and that will apply on every quarter. So how do we calculate the average rate? What is the annual income and annual tax? We'll take the rate. So what is the annual income? First quarter 900 lakhs each. Oh, in each of the quarters. So 900 plus 900 plus 900 plus 900, 3600, and minus 600 because you can set off, and on that also deferred tax was not created. If deferred tax was not created, then we don't consider this into consideration. We don't take this into consideration because deferred tax was not created. That means the impact of set off yet to be considered. We'll consider it now. That becomes 3000. 3000 annual taxable income. Then tax payable on 3000, 40%. That is, these are all rupees in lakhs, 1200. So what is the average rate? Average income tax rate is going to come. Don't take it on 1000. What profit we are going to report? 900, 900, 900, 900, 3600. So 1200 divided by 1600 into 100. So that becomes 33.33 or 1 by 3%. So if you calculate the amount of tax expense to be reported in each quarter, so Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, profit before tax, they said 900 each. So 900, 900, 900, 900, less tax expense. And at what rate we are going to calculate? Tax expense going to be at the rate of 33.33%, 1/3. Basically, you get 300 each. So basically, the benefit of set off is spread across all the 4 quarters. So if you want, you can write profit after tax. You get 600 each. And for cross verification purpose, you can do write one total for your reference. This becomes 3600. This becomes 1200. So total profit after tax becomes 2400. Okay. So if deferred tax was already created, then that means you should not consider this tax rate again, because deferred tax reversal will happen as and when you set it off. Anyway, so hope you got these points. Let's move further. Next one. Innovative Corporation Private Limited (ICPL) is dealing in seasonal product, and the sales pattern of the product quarter wise is under during the financial year 2001 to 10%, 10%, 60%, 20%. Okay, there is a pattern of sales. For the first quarter ending 30th of June 2001, ICPL has provided the following information: sales, employee benefit expenses, administrative expenses, finance cost. ICPL, while preparing the interim financial report for the first quarter, wants to defer 16 crores expenditure to the third quarter on the argument that third quarter is having more sales and therefore third quarter should be debited by more expenditure. Considering the seasonal nature of the business and that expenditures are uniform throughout all quarters, calculate the result of the first quarter as per Ind AS 34 and comment on the company's view. So, what do you think? So, do you think a company can defer the expenditure? Can they say like this? I am into seasonal business. I pay my rent 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh throughout the 12 months. So, my total annual rent is 12 lakhs. But in the third quarter, I'm going to have more sales. So, first quarter, I will recognize only 25,000 rent, and remaining quarters, I will recognize in third quarter. In third quarter, I will have more sales. So, in third quarter, I'll recognize more rent. Can they do it? Answer is no. Expense should be recognized on accrual basis. As and when they're due, it should be recognized. It cannot be postponed for the seasonal nature. So, as per Ind AS 34, income and expense should be recognized when they are earned and incurred respectively. Seasonal income will be recognized when they occur. Seasonal expenses will be recognized when they occur. So, accrual basis should be recognized. Therefore, deferment principle is not in line with Ind AS 34. So, that means you take a sales as 70, employee benefit expenses 25, 12 administration, finance cost 4, total becomes 41, 70 minus 41, total profit becomes 29. Not much complication there. Only point of discussion is expenses cannot be deferred for merely on the ground that business is of seasonal nature. Expense and income should be recognized on accrual basis. As and when they're due, they should be recognized, whether income or expense. No question of any deferment. Fine. Next. Next. Fixed production overheads for the financial year is rupees 10,000. Normal expected production for the year after considering the maintenance and normal breakdown, also considering the future demand for the product, is 2,000 metric ton. Problem like this I would have solved earlier, but still anyway, let's solve this one. It is considered that there are no quarterly or seasonal variations. Therefore, normal expected production for each quarter is 500 metric ton. And the fixed production overheads for the quarters are 2,500. Actual production achieved, first quarter 400, 600, 500, 400, 1,900. Presuming that there are no quarterly or seasonal variation, calculate the allocation of fixed asset production overheads for all the 4 quarters as per Ind AS 34 and Ind AS 2. Basically, allocation. Okay, first of all, what is the annual expenditure? 10,000. And what is the annual production? 2,000 metric ton. So, what is the recovery per unit annually? Recovery or recover, what do you call? Allocate overheads? What is it called as? Okay. You would have learnt in the costing, right? Recovered based on number of units, recovered based on absorption overhead per unit. Correct, that's the name. Absorption per unit. Under absorption, over absorption, you would have learnt. Absorption per unit. Recovery rate. Recovery rate is rupees 10,000 annually divided by 2,000 metric ton, which means rupees 5 per metric ton. Rupees 5 per metric ton. So if you want to allocate quarterly, how it would happen? So we'll do like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 total. So what is the production expected? Expected production. They said the total production 2,000 metric ton. metric ton and spread across no seasonal variations. So 2,000 divided by 5. Hope you understand my handwriting. Expected production. So 2,000 divided by 4, you get 500 each, right? 2,000 divided by 4 metric ton. Then the recovery per unit we already discussed. Recovery per unit, recovery rate 5 rupees or 4 rupees. 5 rupees. Okay. Recovery rate 5 rupees. Total also 5 rupee only. Okay, 2 into 20. So what is the absorbed overheads or expected overheads? I will say expected overheads. Expected overheads. Absorption. Expected overheads. 500 units and 5 per unit. Expectations. So 2,500 each. 400 into 5. And 2,000 into 5, 10,000. Or 2,500, 2,500, 2,500, 10,000. And that's what they say. Each quarter 2,500. That's what we said, 2,500. And each quarter production 500. Each quarter production 500. Hope it is clear how we are writing. Okay, this is expectation. Okay, what is actual production? Actual production. That happened to be different. You know, actual production may be more, actual production may be less. If you produce more, it is over absorption. If you produce less, it becomes under absorption. So what is actual production? 400, 600, 500, 400. 400, 600, 500, 400. So totally 1,900. Totally 1,900. Okay. So what is absorbed overheads? Absorbed overheads. 400 units multiplied by recovery rate 5. So 2,000. 600 multiplied by 5. 3,000. 500 multiplied by 5, 2,500, and 400 multiplied by 5, 2,000. You're going to total for your reference. 9,500. Okay. Now there's a difference, right? Difference. Difference between what? Difference between the expected overheads and absorbed overheads. That we need to comment. Difference between expected overheads and absorbed overheads. So expected overhead is 2,500 and absorbed overhead is 2,000. Can you tell me what is this 500 will be called as? Difference is 500, but what do you call this? 2,500 is expected overheads, but 2,000 is actual absorbed overheads. So what do you call the difference? 500 as. Okay, it's called as under absorbed overheads. Nature, it is under absorbed overheads. Under absorbed overheads. And what is the treatment? So difference is 500. It's called as under absorbed overheads. Hope you understand my handwriting. Under absorbed overheads. And treatment. Under absorbed overheads are in the nature of abnormal expenses. So it should not be taken to the cost of inventory. It will be expensed. So it will be debited to P&L. It is expense to P&L. Debit side of P&L. Next, second quarter, you understand, 2,500 is expected overheads, but absorbed overhead is 3,000, which means you recovered more. So 500 extra. 500 extra you recovered. So it is, you can't say over absorbed. So I will say reversal of under absorbed overheads. Anyway, treatment is same, but anyway, we will say reversal of under absorbed overheads. Reversal of under absorbed overheads. Because previously we have recognized 500 under absorbed overheads. Now reversal, you recognize more and it will be credit to P&L. When you absorb more, you take debit. I mean, when you absorb less, under absorption, you take it to debit side. If you absorb more, excess, you take it to credit side of P&L account. So they will offset basically. And third, no difference. So no treatment. And in the last case, 500, again there is a shortage, under absorbed overheads. So it is under absorbed overheads. Under absorbed overheads. And treatment, it is debited to P&L. Net to net basis, 500 under absorbed. Next quarter, 500 recovered. So both got set off. Ultimately, net amount you have 500, and that's what is 10,000 minus 9,500, 500 under absorbed overheads. And that is taken to P&L. Debit to P&L. Debit to P&L. Basically, why under absorption happens? If you look at the annual basis, you wanted to produce a 2000 metric ton, but you actually produce a 1900. So there is a shortage of 100. Recovery is 5 per unit. So 100 into 5 could not be recovered. That's what is 500. Fine. So you see, I have given the institute solution also like this. They have given the format like this in a paragraph. We have written in a tabular format. And that's how my solution is going to be. I would have given institute solution. You can also follow that. But in some problems like this, format, the way I present will be slightly different. I hope you people will find it more convenient and more logical to present the answer like this, rather than in a sentence format, in a simple tabular format. Okay, hope it is fine. I'll go further. Okay, next. Okay, next problem. ABC Limited manufacture automobile parts. ABC Limited has shown a net profit of 2 lakh for the third quarter 2001. Following adjustments are made while computing profit. Ascertain the correct net profit to be shown in the interim finance report of the third quarter to be presented to the board of directors. They have computed the profit already and they have given some adjustments. So we should treat plus, minus, or ignore it. A typical problem which you can expect in examination point of view. Let's read the problem, let's read the adjustment, and as and when we read, we'll try to discuss the adjustment. So first one, bad debts of rupees 1 lakh incurred during the quarter. 50% of the bad debts have been deferred to next quarter. Is it correct? See, some expenses can be recognized proportionately. Some expenses should be recognized immediately fully. What is the example? Like rent. Annual rent, if you pay once, you know it is accruing monthly, you can proportionately take it divided by 12. But if you make a professional fees, consultancy fees, a one-time payment, or if you make a consultancy for that particular consultancy, professional fees, then you don't proportionately recognize. You received the consultancy in that period, you recognize the expense in that period. You purchase the machinery in that period, you recognize in that period. So that will not be proportionately throughout the period. Like your section 192 and 194G income tax. Salary, income tax spread evenly throughout the year. But professional income TDS is on every payment, you cut 10%. A similar logic. Now here bad debts, 1 lakh, is incurred in the third quarter. So they should have done? Entire 1 lakh should have been recognized fully, because bad debts will not occur evenly. A person will not say, today I'm not paying, today I'm not paying. So bad debts will not will not be accruing throughout the year. Bad debt will happen at a particular point in time. Therefore, they should have recognized the bad debt expenses fully, 1 lakh. But what they have done, 50% of the bad debts have been deferred to next quarter, wrongly deferred. And wrongly deferred means what? That is, should be recognized now. Recognized means profit will reduce. So 1 lakh into 50%. Okay. Okay. Let's write it. Sentence is there, but computation, let me do it. Okay, they have given profit of 20 lakh. Okay, so profit given 20 lakh. Then we'll do adjustments. One of them is this: bad debts wrongly deferred, less bad debts wrongly deferred. Uh, 1 lakh into 50%, 50,000. Within brackets, we are subtracting. Additional depreciation of 4,50,000 resulting from the change in method of depreciation. So when you change the method of depreciation, additional depreciation came, you account accordingly. In the sense, previously it was there, AS 10, even AS 10 is revised now. When you change the method of depreciation from straight line method to WDV or vice versa, then you have to calculate retrospectively. You have to calculate retrospectively. So as if you changed the SLM from the beginning, you had to account for it. So if SLM was 10,000, WDV method is 12,000, then this month you cannot say directly 2,000 rupees. You should take retrospective effect. Had I followed WDV method from the beginning, what would have been the impact? That was there. Now it is not there. Change in method of depreciation from straight line or any method for that matter is not a change in policy, is a change in estimate, which implies the effect is not retrospective, effect is prospective. So previously it was 50,000, now it is 55,000. Recognize 55,000. Additional depreciation of 5,000 not attributable to current quarter does not matter. Whatever is the new depreciation, you are going to provide for it. So additional depreciation because of the change in method, you recognize now. No question of attributable to current quarter. Therefore, we say additional depreciation recognized correctly. No retrospective calculation. Additional depreciation recognized correctly. That is no retrospective calculation. No retrospective calculation. So no adjustment. If there is any retrospective calculation, then out of this additional depreciation, how much relevant for current quarter, only we should take it. Otherwise, this will not apply. Sir, just give me 1 minute. Okay, next. Exceptional loss of 28,000 incurred during the third quarter. 50% of the exceptional losses have been deferred to next quarter. Again, exceptional losses cannot be recognized as proportionate amount. Only normal expenses like rent, salary can be recognized proportionately. Exceptional losses to be recognized immediately. So it's wrong to defer it. So we will recognize the expense now itself. So less exceptional loss wrongly deferred. $28,000 into 50%. 14,000. Rupees 5 lakh expenditure on account of administrative expenses pertaining to third quarter is deferred on the argument that the fourth quarter will have more sales. Therefore, fourth quarter should be debited by higher expenditure. The expenditures are uniform throughout all quarter. Again, wrongly deferred. You cannot defer it. You should recognize now itself. So you cannot defer it. So wrongly deferred again, 5 lakh, subtract it. Administrative expenses, wrongly deferred, 5 lakh. So what is corrected profit to be reported? Corrected reportable profit. Corrected profits to be reported. ₹14,36,000. Okay. So 14,36,000. Okay, fine. So hope you got this. How to present it in the examination? You can present like this. So as the institute solution will be like this: detailed expenditure, detailed sentence wise. Ultimately, what they've got is also same thing. We can present the answer like this. Sufficient. You don't have to write beyond this. Okay, I'll go further. Next one. Due to decline in the market prices in the second quarter, Happy Limited incurred an inventory loss because the market price decreased. Inventory loss occurred. Cost or NRV, whichever is less. The market price is expected to return to previous level by the end of third year. By the end of the year. At the end of the year, the decline had not reversed. What should be the loss to be reported in the interim statement of profit and loss of Happy Limited? Loss should be recognized in the second quarter only. In the sense, you have to value the inventory on second quarter as a independent, standalone financial statement. So, for example, second quarter means June, September. As on 30th of September 2021, if let's say cost is 1 lakh and if NRV is 1 lakh 20,000, sorry, NRV is 80,000, that means you are going to recognize loss of 20,000 entirely in that quarter itself. Suppose the goods are still unsold and the cost of the NRV got reversed in the next quarter, you reverse in the next quarter. For example, in the next quarter it is still 1 lakh, but NRV became 1 lakh 20,000. You can reverse 20,000, or even if you 1 lakh 10,000, you can reverse 20,000 previously. So at the end of the year, you'll report only 1 lakh because plus 20 minus 20 got cancelled. However, on second quarter, irrespective of what happens subsequently, at the end of second quarter, if NRV is less, inventory loss, you should recognize the loss. So you should treat the second quarter as an independent quarter, independent period, as if that is the entire period. How will you recognize? That's how you should give the treatment. Hope you got it. I'll go further. Okay, fine. So last problem, maybe for the day. on in days 34. Hope you got this one. Next one. Again, very similar problem to the one previously we have done, but anyway, let's solve it. LAL Limited provides the following information for the financial year 9-10. Estimate the income for the year ended 31st March 2020. Gross annual income inclusive of estimate capital gains of 4 lakh, 16 lakh 50,000. Quarter 1 3 lakh 50, quarter 2 4 lakh, quarter 3 including the estimated capital gains of 4 lakh 6 lakh, quarter 4 3 lakh. So it's adding up 3 lakh 6 lakh 10 4 10 13 16 lakh 50. Okay. Tax rates on other income 2 lakh 50,000, 20%, on the balance 30%, capital gain 12%. Calculate the tax expense for each quarter, assuming that there is no difference between the estimated taxable income and estimated accounting income. Means no deferred tax. Okay. So you know what should be done with respect to the income tax calculation? We need to calculate average effective income tax rate. So estimate the annual income, estimate the annual tax, then you take the average rate. And here we have two types of incomes. So we will get two types of tax rates also. So we should calculate two tax rates. Okay. So let's calculate. Again, format will be different from institute solution. So let me solve it for you. But my format will be definitely simpler. That's what I believe. You need to tell that. So let's do estimation first. Then we come to actuals. We have two types of tax rate. So I will say like a normal rate. Or I'll say what? Estimate income. Then estimated tax. Then estimated tax rate, average tax rate. Okay, so let me write as normal income and capital gains. Okay, so what's the capital gain? They said capital gain is 4 lakh. So capital gain is 4 lakh. So total becomes 16 lakh 50,000, out of which 4 lakh is capital gain. So what's the normal income? 16 lakh 50 minus 4 lakh, it will be 12 lakh 50,000. 12 lakh 50,000. Okay, and capital gain is then tax rate. Tax rate is there. What tax rate? Capital gain 12%. Capital gain straightforward 12%. So 4 lakh into 12%, 48,000. On estimated tax on 12 lakh 50,000, we have a slab rate. Like first to 2 lakh 50,000 balance income. So 2 lakh 50 into 20, 2 lakh 50 into 20%. 2 lakh 50 into 20%, 50,000. Then balance 10 lakh, right? Balance 10 lakh into 30%, which is 3 lakh. So 3 lakh plus 50,000, you get 3 lakh 50,000. So what's the tax rate going to be on normal income? 3 lakh 50,000 divided by total income, 12 lakh 50,000. into 100 to express in percentage. 3,50,000 divided by 12,50,000 into 100. 28%. Correct? Capital gain, we can take it directly, but anyway, let's follow the process. 48,000 divided by 4 lakh into 100. 12%. Obviously, that's how it should be, because on 4 lakh 12% only we got 48. But anyway, so you should calculate the tax rate for normal separately, capital gain separately. Don't add both. Don't take an average of both. That should be separate. Okay. Now we'll go for quarterly application, quarterly calculation. Quarterly calculation. Quarterly calculation. Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and if you want, you can do one total also. What is profit before tax? They have given 16,50,000. Sorry, 3,50,000. 4 lakh, 6 lakh, 3 lakh. Total, I believe 16 lakh 50. Yes. Then tax expense. They are asking only that, right? Calculate tax expense. Okay. So first quarter, directly you calculate. Which rate? 28% you take. So 3,50,000 into 28%. $98,000. Or here also you can do a breakup. Normal income, capital gain tax, total. Okay, let's do that also. So I'll do like normal income on normal income on capital gain. Then total tax expense. I don't have to show profit after tax. They just ask profit tax expense. That much I calculate sufficient. So normal income, 3,50,000 at 28%, 98,000. Capital gain nothing, 0. So the first expense, first quarter, 98,000. Second quarter, you should be careful. You having capital gain also of 4 lakh. 6 lakh is the total income. So quarter two nothing. So quarter two is fine. Quarter two 4 lakh is fine. 4 lakh into 28%. 4 lakh into 28%. 1,12,000. 0. 1,12,000. Third quarter, you should be careful. You have 6 lakh income, which includes a 4 lakh capital gain. So 4 lakh capital gain, you apply 12%. Directly, you can take 48,000 actually. But if you want to calculate 4 lakh into 12%, you get 48,000. And then regular income. Regular income is how much? Out of 6 lakh, if 4 lakh is capital gain, regular income is 2 lakh. And on 2 lakh, you apply what rate? Regular effective average rate, which is 28%. 2 lakh, 28%. 56,000. So 56,000 is a regular income tax. 48,000 is capital gain tax. Total 56,000 plus 48,000 is 1,04,000. Okay. Last quarter, again regular income 3 lakh. On 3 lakh 28%. 84,000. No capital gain tax. So here we got 84,000. So if we add all for your verification, 98 plus 1 lakh 12 plus 1 lakh 4 plus 84,000 comes to 3 lakh 98,000. I believe that's what is total also. 3 lakh 50 plus 48, 3 lakh 98, and this total also will be 3 lakh 98. So that's how you recognize tax expense in each quarter based on effective annual average tax rate. Average tax rate effective for annual average effective tax rate. So hope you got this one. Any doubts in this standard or in this problem? Okay, so hope you got this one. So this is in days 34, various kind of problems. Not at all complicated, basic ones only. Still, whatever is there, we have solved. Okay, so we have done today in days 1 problems and in days 34 problems. As you can see, I have not covered what is in days 34, interim fast reporting and all. I'm not doing it. I'm straight away going for problems. And that is how my all other sessions will be. Like consolidation. I will not discuss what is consolidation. In my other videos, it's already there. RPL revision lectures already there. You can go to that for revision purpose, for theory purpose. This is purely for upgradation classes. So I have done Ind AS 1 today, Ind AS 34 today. I want to do Ind AS 7 cash flow statement. I think today I'll not have the time. I'll start it tomorrow. So tomorrow our target is to do Ind AS 7 cash flow statement. If time permits, I will also start with the next, which is consolidation problems. Basically theory problems initially. I'll go for problems afterwards. So be prepared with the consolidation, then come and take these classes. Don't come blindly thinking I will explain the concepts. I'm not doing it. For solving the problems, whatever concept is there, I'm going to cover it like the way you have seen today. So I hope you are finding these sessions somewhat useful to upgrade your understanding, to do new variety of problems. Anyway, so we'll stop at this point. Tomorrow our target is cash flow statement followed by consolidation. So please come prepare to the classes. Any doubts you have relevant for those standards, you can ask in the class. So we'll stop at this point. Tomorrow we'll meet at same time, 7 o'clock. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.